You are now listening to Operator. You are now listening to Operator.
Hello, welcome. So we're now listening to my first show of Copy. So we're now listening to The Death of Rave, number 32 by VM, I think VVM. It's like an alter ego of the Caretaker. And it's like this soundscape made with like all these old lost rave anthems from the early 90s. And I'm gonna get into it later for why it's relevant. But for this time now, enjoy. So this whole project, it counts over like 100 tracks, I think, that all sounds a bit like this. It are like these ambiances. And it was made in 2006, and the description of the EP is an audio soup of half-remembered rave anthems featuring all the hits and many misses from the golden age of northern UK rave scene. From the rundown Blackburn warehouses through the N6 service stations en route to Shaddy's in Stoke, the people came. The rave legacy no longer lives on. The corpse of rave bears no resemblance to those heady days in the late 80s and early 90s. So yeah, a happy welcome. So yeah, my name is Annebel, and I'm gonna do this show, Copy. It's gonna be a bit about musical novelty, creativity, all that good stuff, in combination with like the current times. And I'm gonna read like some theory. I did a master thesis about this topic as well, and I think this track really fitted well with what I'm about to talk about, because also in the time it was made, like the early 2000s, artists like Burial and stuff came up, and they worked a lot with time and experience in their music. So here you hear like a lot of samples from the 90s and like those years back, resampled in the early 2000s. And Burial also kind of did the same with his way of making music, like a lot of sample-based stuff, but also a lot of like old audio techniques like vinyl he brought into his samples, but then many years later, when those techniques are not really like necessary to use, so it has like this big nostalgic element to it, and that relates a lot with the book that I did this thesis about. It's called Ghost of My Life by Mark Fisher. I also have it with me. But first I'm gonna try to listen to a bit of what he has to say about this. I hope the Bluetooth works. Let's see.
Music wasn't just music. Music was a threshold, a portal into a whole other set of cultural resources, really. And that circuit has closed down. The possibility of popular modernism has closed down, and instead we have a return really to a kind of kitsch high culture, which is it's kitsch in the sense that it's still there, it persists. But it's no longer capable of generating novelty, of producing the new, and a return to a kind of lumpen mass culture. And that space where these two fields were disarticulated and no longer exists in any significant way.
So that was Mark Fisher, and what he is saying about this is that so he was a writer in the UK. He was also like very much in the early 90s like rave scene. He was also good friends with people like Code 9, and he wrote a book called Capitalist Realism, a classic. And what he says in that book is that he is very critical of capitalism. And what he says in the book is that capitalism is so stuck in our modern world that we can't even imagine something else than capitalism. And he thought that music culture in the 60s throughout the 90s was actually capable of imagining another world, of imagining a future that was outside of the world that we already had. So like a more hopeful, a more equal future. But now in the 2000s, now capitalist realism really started to sink in. He has said that novelty, that chance of imagining another system in music culture has kind of died. Music culture has gotten like a lot more fragmented, and there's not this big movement anymore that is capable of imagining another future. And what do I mean with like these huge cultures and music cultures in the 60s and the 90s? For example, the hippie movement and music like the Beatles was like super experimental in the 60s, and there was like this big youth movement, hippie culture that was imagining like a different system outside of the realms of capitalism. But also in the 90s, I'm now going to find an excuse to play Drexciya because I love Drexciya, but they did this as well in the Afrofuturism movement. So Drexciya made like this whole universe also around their music to also imagine a world that was more equal to black people. And their world, it was like this kind of fantasy world where the women that were thrown off the boat in the transatlantic slave trade were giving birth to creatures that could live underwater and were making this new society underwater. And yeah, it's ingrained in all their music. It's so cool. So we're now going to listen to Polymono Plex Gel, I think. Yeah, enjoy. Oh, such a good track. Okay, we're gonna go on a bit with explaining this Mark Fisher theory of no new music after the 2000s. So what he writes is that although in the 60s throughout the 90s, like this big culture of music was able to create like something new, and therefore have this feeling also in society that time moves on, because everything that was like from a time period before was like deemed as retro. And what we now see like also a bit in the rave scene right now is that, for example, the 90s are coming back, the 2000s are coming back, the 60s are coming back, like all these time periods from before are coming back in the present, and this confuses our notion of time. And he saw that there were also musicians actually experimenting in the 2000s with this notion. So the Caretaker that we listened to in the beginning, that's someone who really experiments with this notion of time, of like things from the past being brought back into the present. Mark Fisher calls this hauntology, like the past is haunting us like a ghost in the present. And elements of music culture of the past are haunting us like lost ghosts in the present, like all the futures that didn't came through. And another artist who works a lot with this is Burial. So Burial wasn't a part of the 90s rave culture, but still he feels this collective memory, and he brings it into his music. And how he brings it into his music is, for example, by sampling vinyl needles and vinyl cracks, and that kind of fucks our vision of in which time it is made up. Because, for example, Archangels was made in 2007, I think, but he uses a lot of sample of these needle crackles, like outdated technologies. So you're a bit like, okay, in what time area was this made? And he did that all, I think, in Audacity. It's fucking crazy how he does it. And in this particular tune, it's called Raver. He is feeling like nostalgia of like this rave culture, but he wasn't even part of it. So the nostalgia goes further than only like the people who are part of it. It's like this collective malaise that we're going through as a society right now, because we can't produce or imagine the new, because we're so stuck like in our ideas of capitalism and neoliberalism. So yeah, enjoy this track, and try to listen to like all the outdated samples and sound sources you're hearing. It's like very detailed, but with this tune, especially at the end, you will hear like some needle crackle and stuff. So yeah, enjoy. And there you could hear it. The needle crackle. Yeah, so when I first read this book, Ghost of My Life, I was super sad, I think, because it felt like it really made sense for me, like his theory, and that like this big wave of like newness and excitement like kind of felt lacking. But on the other side, I wasn't completely agreeing with it because of all the new music I kind of heard, or like music I didn't understand when I was, for example, a teenager. And in this thesis, I tried to also critique this theory so I wouldn't get like super depressed and like see if there were some hopeful like counter stories. And for that, I also was like, okay, what defines whether something is new music or whether something is retro, like music from the past? And in Ghost of My Life, Mark Fisher lays out kind of a test to decide whether something is new or feels new or not. And like when providing a statement, he encourages the reader to imagine being in the 1980s and hearing the Arctic Monkeys' I Bet You Hear Good on the Dance Floor from 2006, like for the first time. And he says it wouldn't cause like this, he calls it a future shock, like this, oh, I am hearing something new that I haven't heard before, because like it's super similar to like the post-punk that was being made in the 80s. So therefore he labels it as retro. But if you haven't lived in the 80s, like how can you test this, you know? Whether something feels new or not is also a subjective experience. And there are so many experiences I had with like music that was, for example, made in the 2010s, where I didn't understand it until like 10 years later or something. I remember I was listening when I was a teenager to FKA Twigs, and some of her songs I liked, but some of them I just couldn't place because I had never heard music like hers before, especially like this track. It's called Water Me. It's produced by Arca. She's so good. And yeah, and I think together with FKA Twigs co-produced, but I remember listening to this for the first time and I just couldn't place it. I didn't like it. And now listening to it like 10 years later, I completely understand this song and I really loved it. So it still gave this future shock feeling to me and it still felt super new. So that was like a bit of a already one counter argument against this Ghost of My Life book, even though I love the book, but yeah, I wanted to see a bit further than it. So we're now going to listen to Water Me by FKA Twigs.
He said it's too much in power. I guess I'm stuck with me. He told me I was so small. I told him water me.
So that was FKA Twigs, Water Me. And then going further on like the idea of newness, the word newness, like in its meaning, has actually also changed over time. So where like newness now usually means something like produced, introduced, discovered for the first time, not existing before. This meaning is a quite new meaning to the word new. And in Old English, the word's meaning has more to do with renewing. So like transforming something that already exists to reproduce, to regenerate. So it doesn't see like this new thing as like something without any origins in something. It's more something that builds upon something that's already existing. And that's a big difference to it. And that's also quite similar to another philosopher's like description of the word. He's called Byung-Chul Han. And he references to the new as something that emerges from surprising variations and combinations. So he comes more from like Eastern philosophies, and like this idea, this Western idea of the new, it really sees things as like standalone things. There is like one new and it's like in an original thing, and like things that build upon it or like remake it, like for example right now that the 90s are coming back, are immediately like seen as retro, as copies. And for example, he quotes in his book, the Chinese idea of the original is determined not by an unique act of creation, but by an unending process, not by a definitive identity, but by constant change. Indeed, change does not take place within the soul of an artistic subjectivity. The trace effaces the artistic subjectivity, replacing it with a process that allows no essentialist positioning. So creation is more so seen as something new. And like he also says that it is in Chinese painting, new people learning the crafts learn it from copying, and a copy that's as good as the original painting is seen as worth as much as like the original one, because the idea of an original doesn't exist as much. And newness is more so seen as like something that happens by constant copying and then the surroundings coming in, because it's not believed that things have an inner essence as much as in Western philosophies, then that it's like this inner essence and like an inner original. And I think also if you listen to music with a lot of samples, for example, it doesn't hide its origins, but it can make like these never made before combinations, for example, in tracks that do make it something new, in my opinion, because it's a new combination. It doesn't necessarily have to be like this new thing, but a new combination, is that also not newness? And to accompany that with a track, I don't know if it has to do with it that much. After this, by the way, we're going to talk about DJing finally. The introduction was a bit longer than expected, but the new JPEG Mafia album just came out. I really like it, and in this track he uses like a lot of samples, so I was like, okay, this is fine. And his music still feels like super fresh and new to me, so yeah, enjoy this one. It's called It's Dark and Hell is Hot.
I just wanna make it home. Got all my Air Vision Pros. I kill my own default.
Ela quica no pau, ela senta no pocotó, ufa pocotó. Fica de quatro, nós bota sem. Ela quica no pau, ela senta no pocotó, ufa pocotó. Ela quica no pau, ela senta no pocotó.
This hoe told me I'm a dog, but all my bitches say I can't even fuck this shit. I can't be no business. On my knees in front of God, but I'm not even bathed. I can't keep no secrets. Walking that bitch, ayy. Take a fuck in that bitch, ayy. I'm lit, I'm not gonna switch. Keep it in my hips be keeping them pop. You missing my life. Stress from truth, you got to the dime. The wrist flips to keep her in tight. This hoe told me I'm a dog, cause all my bitches say I can't even fuck this shit. I can't be no business. On my knees in front of God, but I'm not even bathed. I can't keep no secrets. Baby, don't even speak.
Ela quica.
I get that technique thinking like this. They never met me but be on my dick. How you don't care what you got in the poop? How you don't care what you got in the opinion? Smoking your fan like I'm taking a swig. Free but you can't be grand. If you gonna be wild, make it make sense. We just gon' wave by, don't distant. I can count all of my industry friends on my hands, and my niggas, they be in demand. I'm some rap, I know what it is. If I show you a drink, I ain't playing with kids. You niggas looping on leave, I'll never repeat. Your bullshit ain't worth leaving.
Fica de quatro, nós bota sem. Ela quica no pau, ela senta no pocotó.
Mais uma do Ramego.
Ela quica no pau, ela senta no pocotó.
Yes, so that was from the new JPEG Mafia album. So good. Okay, so now we're gonna finally get into DJing and what it says about new music. Because if there is like a music practice for me that bends the idea of newness and like who is making new music and what new music is, it must be DJing. Because with DJing, the process of music making lies solely in like merging already existing songs and establishing new connections between two or more soundscapes or songs. And there is no way of creating an original song with an original essence. There are no intentions for making a new song. And it really gave this question to me, like, can DJing create new music? And for example, according to Mark Fisher, this can only happen if the DJ creates like this feeling of future shock, and is like very dependent on that with the songs he is playing. But if you look, for example, like to Martijn, he is a DJ and producer, and what he says about it is super fun to me. He quotes that he was listening to DJ Randall, who sadly passed away, so rest in peace, Randall. And what he says about it is this is in True Lines. It's a booklet that he brought out with the reissue of like some of his tracks. So also is it new or not? So here it goes. He was listening to Randall, and like Randall, he has this blending way that suggests almost like this wrong and clashing blending of things, but that exactly creates like this tension. And I will read it for a minute right now. Randall would do something similar to with sounds and melodies, play two records that are kind of clashing in keys, but at the same time complementing each other in strangely dissonant ways. That slightly uncomfortable moment when the clash leads you into a point, and now I have to, yes, here, where you are waiting to be released from it. You want to simultaneously turn it off, but also keep listening. Dissonance brings a bit of pain to the music. I love the tension that it brings, but it's hard to do as a producer since you automatically tend to tune all the instruments to fit together. Those moments in a mix where two beats become a single new one, where the dissonant clashing of sounds turns the vibe more sinister. That's the moment where you are in front, in the front row at the club, and the DJ brings in that new track, and you feel the tension building. It's a feeling I'm absolutely addicted to, and I keep on clashing in both my own music as well and listening to DJs play. That's the red zone. So he is mentioning that there is a way of where DJing, this combining of two already existing tracks, can bring about newness that a music producer wouldn't usually do, because it can build like this tension of like these tracks clashing. And as a producer, you're usually more like into sounding everything like good together. And yeah, I wanted to play a track accompanying this all from Martijn. I'm gonna look for it. Which one am I gonna play? Martijn has a lot of nice tracks, so I think I'm gonna start with Mega Drive Generation. It's a really fun track, so enjoy. So yes, that was Martijn, Mega Drive Generation. And what I really liked about also the booklets of this True Lines. So this is like a reissue of like old tracks from Martijn that are remastered and brought out this year with this accompanying booklet with like essays and stuff. So what I like about his approach in it, he actually lived also in this scene, of course, like in the late 90s and the early 2000s, and brought out a lot of music then. And he says also in this booklet that like there was this constant stream of like new music, and like playing old music was music that wasn't brought out like in that year or like in that month even, was immediately considered like old. And that there is also a value in re-worshipping like things and not labeling them as old and like only focusing on like the present music. And he says that it was also like dismissive of his own productions in the booklet. And then he gives like examples on how newness also evolved when his conception of newness evolved, and that through playing live, for example, he was remaking his old productions into something new. And then through his mentor program, he was teaching through his old songs a new generation of like producers to come up. And now with this reissue, he is like refocusing his old tracks into like something new in this essay booklet. And I really liked looking at it in that way, that also through the context you can make newness and like make new connections. And now there's also a Vancouver rework. It's gonna come out and it's made by Farako. I love him. He is so good. My favorite producer maybe now. But it's from Vancouver, and I thought it was very fitting. Like in this context, it's another way to reproduce something, but let it do by someone else, and it creates something new or something old, is it? But I think it creates something new. So here is the Vancouver rework by Farako. Enjoy. Yes, so that was the reshape of Rocco from Vancouver, from Martijn. Really, really nice. Really like it. So coming back a bit to DJing and music culture and what DJing says about the new. So there's this book. It's called Audio Culture. I think it's a really nice book. If you're like interested in like overthinking the concept of DJing, and there they say it like super nicely that also DJing is like kind of this place where you don't really know like if it's like a modernist or like a postmodernist practice. It's like a merging of like different styles also in it. The DJ in themselves is like kind of empty also in a way, because it's like a DJ is super dependent on its surroundings. So of course, especially in the 90s, like the DJ as like this superstar kind of came up. But before that, so DJing, I think it started like in the 40s. People started doing it and like mixing tracks together. People started doing it in the 60s, but it was more so to have music stay like true to its source, because otherwise like people would usually perform in bands and stuff. So the DJ in himself is like completely dependent on its surroundings. All the plans like you make yourself, it will always be dependent on like your surroundings, and in the surrounding, in placing yourself as a DJ in a surrounding, I think newness can like be created there, in like having this merge from you as a person with your surroundings, and having a new combination start. Okay, so this was my show, the first episode. I really I kind of enjoyed it, so that's super nice because it will be a residency. So I'm gonna do it again in like 2 months, I think. So always good to enjoy it. And I want to play, like, if I can find it, this little thing that I really enjoyed. I saw this on Instagram talking about like DJs and their surroundings. It's super cute. It's about a hold DJ. This is someone who DJs in the 90s for people that are waiting on hold on their telephone line. So I hope you enjoyed this little sample in there.
David is Britain's first hold jockey. Armed with a compact disc collection which ranges from reggae to modern jazz, his job is to entertain confused software users as they wait on the telephone for help. There's normally less than a dozen on hold at any one time, making him the DJ with probably the smallest audience in the world.
I'd like a larger audience, but part of the objective is that we don't have a large audience. But the job is to relieve the tension of being put on hold. There's nothing worse than being there on the end of the phone listening to electronic green sleeves.
In offices beneath his studio, the company's 65-strong telephone support operation deals with up to 1,000 calls a day. All day long, they know how many calls they've dealt with and how many are waiting and listening to David.
Well, it's just coming up to the top of the hour. That's my cue to go home. Don't forget, I shall be back here 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. And
But unlike every other DJ in Britain, his bosses say the lower they can get his audience, the better.
So cute. Oh my god, I really love this. Okay, so that was it for me. Now we have Floppy coming up. I hope I said it right. No, I didn't. It's gonna be all right. Fantastic ending. I can maybe I will just like play some ambience and then you can tune in. Yeah. Okay. I think I'm about to play the same song as I played it in the beginning. Some other ambience. Enjoy. Or I can play the... No, I will just play this. Okay. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you so much. And see you in 2 months.